We take a look at some of the Ravens' pending free agents next year on Locked On Ravens with a very special guest.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we return. It's another episode of Locked On Ravens here on Purple Friday. Kevin Ostreicher, your host, here with former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver, Super Bowl champion Qadry Ismail. And Q, the Ravens will not be partaking in the divisional round this weekend, but we now have the offseason to look forward to. The Ravens, plenty of opportunities to improve. How you doing today?
Whew. I mean, after this wild card weekend, I am not frustrated, but I am saying to myself, could you imagine if this Ravens ball club was at full strength? I honestly think that they would have taken it to the next level. When I say next level, I'm saying it really wouldn't have mattered who they would have played. They would have been advancing. I think that they were that good. But we're on the outside looking in. The Steelers are now sitting on the bench, on the sideline. They can't say anything. And I'm giving a little love to the Bengals. AFC North, got to give some love. So, therefore, I'm rooting for them. They're in my corner right now. And hopefully we will see how it all unfolds as far as the divisional round. But other than that, I'm doing well, Kevin.
Yeah, the Bengals are my upset pick of the week. I think they're going to get the better of Tennessee, but you know, I know for Ravens fans who to root for, Cincinnati or Tennessee, it can be a little bit tough. But you know, my pick for this weekend, the upset is Cincinnati for me. But Q, for the Ravens, yeah, I agree with you. They constructed a really good roster in the offseason, and it was just injury after injury that really held them down, and it capped their ceiling a ton. Even, you know, this wasn't, as I've talked about, not a thing where they just went through the training camp injuries, then they were done with it. This was a full year thing. Every week it was they lost a guy for a week or a guy for a month or a guy for the year. And that was really something that I think was just so difficult. And they had the magic at the beginning of the year. It just did not carry over to the end of the year. But now, Q, the Ravens are probably going to look a lot different in the 2022 season. And that has to do a lot with the fact that they have a lot of pending free agents. But before we get into those free agents, I do want to talk to you about some guys who are currently on the Ravens roster who could be salary cap casualties. Some people have linked their contracts, you know, the savings that they could save to them. So I want to talk about one offensive guy, one defensive guy with you. Tackle Alejandro Villanueva. He's a guy who was brought in to play right tackle. You know, they banked on the health of Ronnie Stanley, as I know we talked about before, Q, and it just did not pay off. So now the Ravens, with Stanley out, had to move Villanueva back to the left side. I call him consistently inconsistent over the course of the season, just somebody who had good stretches, but were mostly just not great stretches. And I think for a player who, you know, looking at his contract, he is under contract for one more season, has a $9.25 million cap hit, but the Ravens can save $6 million by releasing him. So Q, if you're running this operation for the Ravens, is Alejandro Villanueva back in Ravens uniform next season?
No, not at that number. I think he showed versatility. As you said, going from right over to the left side, Ronnie Stanley goes down. I thought he, for the most part, showed up when it came to playing the full season. You got to put that and take that into account as far as, you know, what you experienced this year. I think the priority for the Baltimore Ravens is to, you know, figure out a friendly cap number that will work both for them as well as Alejandro. I think he'd be a great backup. You know, he's only in his seventh year. And, you know, typically, in my experiences, you would have a guy that caliber now, he's hitting his prime. When it comes to our division and what we've seen from whether it be Watt, whether it be Hendrickson, he's good, but those guys, you know, expose a lot as far as what he couldn't do. And the speed guy, we saw even with Crosby coming off the edge in the first opening week of the season in Las Vegas, like he really struggled. And so I would say, yeah, figure out a good friendly cap number. I like depth. that's kind of like the telltale sign. What are we looking at? Are we saying that there are enough guys out there on the free agent market that would be less of a unknown? Because what we didn't know is the fact that he had issue with speed guys. So, if we can quantify a guy out there on the market and be good and comfortable with him, then I say get rid of Alejandro. If not, we negotiating, bro. We trying to get you to a lower number. And if you want to come back, we'll welcome you back with open arms. I think he's a great locker room presence. I think that his professionalism is worth, having a conversation with. I wouldn't say just cut him loose.
Right. And I think one of the more interesting parts of this whole Villanueva situation, the Ravens offensive tackle situation, is not just the Patrick McCary extension, but the presence of Juwan James in that locker room. Somebody who is a veteran, missed the entire season, but has been in the system, was not necessarily practicing on the field with him, but was in the meetings, was in the locker room. Yeah. And for the Ravens, if that's their veteran backup guy, if they want to say, Alejandro Villanueva, this was, great locker room person, but for $6 million, and we have Juwan James, and if they bring in one or two tackles in the draft, let's say, then I don't know where the space is for a guy like Villanueva on the roster, especially if Stanley comes back. Now, I'm not ruling out anything, but I don't know. I feel like the writing's kind of on the wall, but for what he brought in the locker room, I think that will always be appreciated, regardless of if he's in Baltimore next year or not. And speaking of locker room, but also some good play on the field, is our defensive guy here we're going to talk about. That's Marcus Peters. Now, I know some people might be surprised when I mention Marcus Peters and even just the possibility of getting rid of a guy like Marcus Peters. He's been consistent ever since coming to Baltimore. He's been a guy who has embraced the organization. The organization has embraced him. But looking at the contract, Peters coming off of an ACL injury, the Ravens would save $10 million by releasing him and by putting him out there on the open market. Peters has a $15.5 million cap hit this year. The Ravens would save $5.5 if they were to get rid of him. Now, my thing with this, Q, is I think Peters is too valuable to completely let go. If there's a restructuring option that they could look to, maybe $15 million isn't where you want him right now. Like, I understand that number is pretty big, but I think for what he brings on the field, for what he's done off of it, I think he's too valuable of a piece to let go.
Corners are a rare commodity, and when you find them, you keep them. This team had an abundance of corners at the beginning of the year, and by the end of the year, you were hanging on by the hair of your chinny chin. I think you're going to find a way to keep Marcus Peters. Don't be a fool. Don't try to overthink it. Don't try to be that guy that you think somehow, some way we can get fancy with the numbers and the spices. No. I think he's a playmaker. I think that, his football IQ is so incredibly high. Watching him, in that Rams game when he was on the sideline and calling out the different looks and the different route combinations, and he was correct. That says an awful lot as far as the engagement. He has the immense amount of respect in that locker room. Guys really, really appreciate him. I think Justin Houston wouldn't have come if it wasn't for, Marcus Peters, selling this organization, this franchise. So, yeah, I mean, if Eric DaCosta wants to say rank it in priority, sure, give him, a restructured contract, put more money in his pocket and some guarantees to be able to push out the cap. But I wouldn't sit there and try to get too fancy with it. Somebody would scoop him up in a heartbeat. I think with his knee, because it happened so early, you can expect him back, put him on PUP, start a camp and the whole nine, but you can expect him back. I think, Marcus Peters is a keeper.
Yeah, and just having the duo of Humphrey and Peters makes this Ravens defense, from what we saw at the end of 2021, just makes it so much better than it was, because I even think the loss of Peters was the most impactful injury the team had throughout the entire season, outside of what Lamar Jackson brings and, with quarterback being so important. But we saw from the start that Don Martindale, he tried his hand at blitzing a little bit, but when you have a player like Marcus Peters on the field, you can trust that player to stick to his zone, know the game, know what's coming. And sure, Peters, he bites on some stuff. He's an aggressive corner. He makes some mistakes, and he'll jump route sometimes that isn't there. But you live with those mistakes because of the returns you get when he does guess the play right, which is, I think, more than he does make mistakes. So you want a player like that on your roster. And I think even for $15.5 million, I understand it is a lot of money, but I just think the impact that he has is too great to just let go completely. We'll head into our first break, though. When we get back, we'll be talking about the Ravens and their free agents on the offensive side of the ball. So stay tuned for that, and we'll be right back. Hey, Ravens fans, this is Kevin Olshaker with an incredible app everyone who buys gas needs to know about in Get Upside. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and use promo code TOUCHDOWN and get a bonus 25 cents per gallon on your first fill-up. That's up to 50 cents cash back. Don't pay full price of the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. Just download the app free and use promo code TOUCHDOWN to get up to 50 cents a gallon cash back on your first tank. Some people who drive a lot are making as much as $200 a month in cash back, and there's no catch. The cash back is added right to your account. You can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or any gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Get Upside app and use promo code TOUCHDOWN to get 50 cents a gallon cash back on your first tank. That's code TOUCHDOWN. BetOnline would like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue our march to the playoffs and beyond. BetOnline remains the number one spot for all the best sports wagering action for 2022. It's a new year, and that means new updated desktop and mobile website. Sign up today and receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to get started on football, basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC right to your favorite Vegas casino games. The way to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for 2022. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. We return our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher is still here with Qadry Ismail. And Q, the Ravens, their free agent list is looking pretty long this offseason. They're going to look different in 2022. And starting off on offense, kind of turn this into, I guess it's a game. I don't have a better word for it. Kind of like a should they stay, should they go type deal, where I'm just going to throw a name out there. And, whether you want them to stay or you think they should stay or think they should go, kind of talk about that decision a little bit in your eyes if you were Eric DeCosta, if you're running that operation. So I'm going to start with my guy. I'm going to start with him. I'm going to say first name out there, Mr. Devonta Freeman himself.
I know that's your dude. I get it. The short answer is, what are we looking like in the draft? No question about it. JK as well as Gus, they're going to be a little bit to get back. Say what you will about an ACL tear. Say what you want when it comes to the position of running back. That's a demanding physical position, and an ACL tear is going to take a minute to really get fully back. So I talked to your dude, but we're going to explore options elsewhere. We will absolutely keep you on the speed dial. Stay shaped, stay ready, and that's it.
It's kind of like that situation is like the Des Bryant one where it's kind of a little different, but they brought him in for the workout. They send him back, but say, hey, stay ready, because if we need you, we're going to bring you in. And they brought him in, caught a couple touchdowns. But, if I'm the Ravens here, I'm saying as a third down option, is someone who doesn't have to carry the offense, is a pass catcher. That's where I'm saying, hey, I think Freeman could be valuable. But I do understand what you're saying, Q, because in the draft, there are a couple of those guys where if they want to go younger, there are a couple options where they could get a third down back there. And that's where also the next name here, Latavius Murray, is someone who personally I think just he profiles too similarly to Gus Edwards and didn't really have the year a lot of people were expecting to bring him back, in my opinion. But what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I'm disappointed that, he had the injury, and I think durability at the running back position comes into play. I think when he was out there, he looked the part. He had some big runs. What? Did Freeman have a big run? Or just what? So
he had a couple. He had a few.
Yeah,
one or two.
Over how many weeks? 18 weeks. We can figure out how to get big runs. I think Latavius had the markings of, getting out there and looking like, hey, I'm about to bust this thing open, and being somewhat successful with it. So for me, I like Latavius. still need a veteran presence. I'm keeping him if the price is right.
Interesting. Yeah. So we're flip flopping on the running backs. I'm Freeman. You're Murray.
Dave
And
Murray, come on now.
I know. I'm somebody who, they could shock us all and just take a running back in like the third round and just build that out and say, hey, we want a 3-headed monster again, taking them back to the Ingram, Dobbins, Edwards days in 2020. So they could do that too. But I think having a veteran is nice, especially for how young Dobbins and Edwards still are. But a veteran in another room, the only veteran in the wide receiver room, in Sammy Watkins, is someone who started off pretty well and then just completely disappeared in the second half of the season. He had his yearly Sammy Watkins injury, which people talk about, came back, didn't really perform, didn't really have a lot of catches. Was that someone you're keeping around?
No, I think he showed himself. No, I like the emergence of the young guys. I think that, when this team was put together, I know Eric DeCosta talked about throwing the ball. This is a throwing league. I know there was mention of him, stacking up for Lamar, some receivers and all that. I like Sammy Watkins. I'm not in love with it. And I think for him, his better days are behind him. That Miami game, you got to make that play in the back of the end zone. I think that was the game-changing play. Sure, the Detroit game, Raven Nation loves you. Did amazing as far as the fourth and what was it, 4th and 23 or something?
Yeah, like 19 or something.
19. Yeah, so it goes right on up there with Hey Diddle Diddle, Ray Rice up the middle. It goes right on up there with it. Tip of the cap to you, brother. Love you. But let's see where you go elsewhere. Maybe somebody else is going to be out there and going to feel the love and feel the need to have you on the squad. And that I say that with all due respect, no sarcasm intended.
Oh yeah, and I think Watkins embraced his role and embraced his time with the organization. I mean, we saw it in the opening press conference all those months ago where he said, this is Lamar Jackson's show. I just want to be a part of it. And, he really embraced that. Like you talked about that Miami play, the one, he kind of lost it in the lights or something. Did you ever have that as a receiver where the lights kind of altered your vision and you just did not know where the ball was and you couldn't bring it down?
Yeah, that has happened a few times. I know up in Detroit, there was like this, I remember Herman Moore talked about there was this spot in the Superdome that you were like, oh, God, I'm not really sure. And I know in the Metrodome, it was there. The Superdome down in New Orleans, it wasn't too bad. It was a little dull, actually. And then in the Super Bowl down in Tampa, literally the longest play from scrimmage was my 44-yard catch. And I've said this story so many times, but I do this catch drill that I formulated to help me as far as consistency of catching and the whole nine. And I'm ready to go. So sure enough, game is on, and the longest play from scrimmage was the 44-yard catch. It was man-to-man. I beat the guy off the line of scrimmage. I'm going down the field. I look back, and I'm like, oh, God, I can't see the ball. But I just trusted. I knew it was going to come down, and I was going to be okay. So sure enough, there's a couple of pictures of me, really like, oh, here comes the ball. But that jazz, man, you got to have the ultimate in composure. And I think, when I look at Sammy Watkins play, you got to have the ultimate in composure, but you also got to seize the moment. The moment is it's zero coverage. Like, that's a touchdown. That's easy pickings. Like, what are we doing here? So for him to not do that and to come up, I hate to say it, small, is just more than just disappointing. Like, golly, bro, like, that's why they brought you in here. Your veteran, savvy experience didn't show up, and I think that's why I would say, yeah, there's another receiver out there, whether it be Duvernay, whether it be Prochet, whether it be Tylan Wallace. I mean, them young guys, they earned their stripes. Time to see what they got. put them fresh legs out there. Let it go.
Yeah, I don't hate the idea of a veteran in that room. I just wouldn't want them to have like a huge amount of snaps. I think it is time for the youth movement in that room completely, where you can trust these guys. I mean, Marquise Brown now is entering year 4.
He's a veteran.
He is exactly. You know, they're getting up there a little bit. You know, so I think that instead of having 2 3-year guys and 2 second-year guys and 2 first-year guys, you now have a room that has been around for a little while, and I think can make those catches in big spots and just go about an NFL season without having the mentorship of a guy who has to play a ton of snaps there. But Q, 2 more guys I want to talk to you about. Let's go back to the run game a little bit and talk about Patrick Ricard, the fullback, who this is an interesting one to me because the art of the fullback has been dying out in the NFL for a little while now. There are only a handful of teams to use a fullback, one of them being the Baltimore Ravens. So the market for Ricard, we don't really know what it's going to be yet. But would you bring him back if it would cost a little bit to get him?
Yes. What Greg Roman does, it relies upon a guy like a Pat Ricard. We saw what it was when it was bully ball back in the day. We see what it is as far as the I want to run the ball continuity of an offense. You got to have a guy for Greg Roman to do what he wants to do. You got to have a guy like Pat Ricard on your team. Pancake Pat, that's what Lamar has dubbed him. And his versatility, you know, whether it be special teams and obviously what he brings to the table in the locker room as well. Again, like that's that hybrid tight end / fullback, you know, come out of the backfield, get some catches type of guy. So Pancake Pat, welcome back to the club.
Yeah, I'm in the same mindset as you, Q. I just think he's not going to cost a absolutely backbreaking amount of money to bring back, especially with the fullback position not being as prominent as it once was. And he knows the system. He's had success. He's been there. He's great in the community. He's someone who's adored by the team and the fan base. I think it's a home run to bring him back. And that's another player now. It's kind of the same ilk, loved by the fans, the team, the community. Bradley Bozeman, a center who really established himself over the course of the last couple of seasons, but really first position center, second position guard, played center for years at Alabama, switched to guard coming in, and now is back at center his first year in 2021. Played well, I think played himself into a lot of money, but that could be an issue for the Ravens because, you know, they don't have a ton of it to spend right now. So, Q, is Bradley Bozeman somebody who you would bring back to this team?
Yeah. Ryan Jensen, Mr. Tough Guy, and what he brought to the table was the last kind of center guy that I was like, all right, you know, you let him go. He got paid. Tampa took him. They were just okay, and now they got, you know, Tom Brady, and Tom Brady, you know, is doing what he's doing in part to his offensive line and in part to Ryan Jensen. Bradley Bozeman is that guy for the Baltimore Ravens currently. So I'm all about the center. I know Matt Burke was all about helping out Joe Flacco. You go way back, and my guy Mitchell, he was an integral part in what we did, and even Mike Flynn was an integral part in what we did in my heyday. So I know center, you know, when you have one, he sets the table as far as the offensive line. But more importantly, he has that trust and that back and forth with him and his quarterback, in this particular case, Lamar Jackson.
Right. And I don't think anybody wants to go back to what this team went through in 2020 at the center position. Matt Skura clearly was not himself. And Patrick McCary had Matt Skura had Lamar Jackson looking like Odell Beckham out there with the one hand. He had him looking like you out there with the catches he had to make. I mean, just crazy, unbelievable, you know, snags of these snaps that were so off base, and Bozeman provided that stability. You know, it's gonna cost a lot to bring him back. I'm kind of anticipating that's going to be the case. Center is a premium position, and for good reason. It's hard to find a good one, but the Ravens have a good one, and I think, as you do, Q, they should bring him back as well. We'll head into our final break. Then when we get back, we'll flip the field, talk about some defensive Ravens free agents. So stay tuned for that, and we'll be right back. It's the new year, so that means New Year's resolutions. If yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure you include a Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, maybe even better than a candy bar. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein, which for a regular candy bar, those usually have around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. There are so many flavors to choose from, so go to Built.com, use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. We return here, our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oshek is still here with Qadry Ismail. And Q, we talked about some of those Ravens offensive phrases, but now let's flip the field, talk about the defense. There are arguably more guys. In fact, there are more on that defensive side of the ball who are slated to hit free agency, who were big impact players. Now, one of them, which is a curious case for me, is Justin Houston. Because with the injury to Tyus Bowser, it seems like that is true. There's been no confirmation, but with the pictures of him, in that operating room in the hospital, it seems like he's on the road to recovery now with that torn Achilles. I think that ups the priority to bring back a player like Justin Houston, who is not the exact same player as Tyus Bowser, but knows the system, is a veteran presence, and can really help this football team.
Yeah, he wasn't a liability whatsoever. Like if you're looking at other free agents that you brought in and you brought them late into the game, you're like, well, could he not? Where is he in his career? He was productive enough. He was pressuring the quarterback. I think, his locker room presence, they what do they call him, Yoda? The way in which he is so on top of things and helping out a young Odafe Owe was really invaluable. So I just think, why not bring him back? I think he was, at an affordable price. I think he could still play. I think that it'd be foolish just to let a guy like that go. I think we saw with some other guys that, when they left, they kind of picked up and did what they needed to do. For example, Yannick Ngakoue. So I just think, Justin Houston is a good, solid fit for what Wink Martindale wants to do.
Yeah, and I wanted Justin Houston in Baltimore for like 3 years. And when they finally got it, when they finally pulled the trigger on it, I knew it was going to be a good fit. And I think it showed. He is not the player he once was, but he's still very productive. And he's a guy who I think really helped them out in key situations. And as you talked about, that Yoda factor, having a veteran for a guy like Odafe Owe. And if they bring in another rookie edge rusher, even like Jalen Ferguson, Dalen Hayes, those types of players, I think having a veteran's great who can also produce on the field there. But speaking of veterans, Q, let's talk about Josh Bynes a little bit. Josh Bynes is a player who I have dubbed the savior of the Baltimore defense. It all turned around when Josh Bynes came in, it seemed like. He has expressed interest in returning to the team. Q, would you bring him back?
Heck yeah. Done. End of discussion. Okay. John, when they were in training camp, went over to Josh Bynes with the joint practice for the Carolina Panthers. They were ecstatic to see him then. We know that John, I'm not going to say John's a curmudgeon in a negative way, but, head coaches aren't going to go out of their way with every former player. Clearly, he came in and instantly settled down a linebacking core that, we were like saying, oh my God, sound the alarm. Things are going on wrong, whether it be Patrick Queen and his issues, whatever it might have been, things settled in. You're absolutely right. Savior is a good word to use. He said he wants to play. He's not feeling like, oh, I'm just okay. I'm feeling like I can play. And if you can play, then we want you. And you should be in that black and purple till you can't play no more. So, that linebacking core, the defense itself, give me Josh.
Yeah, I'm with it. And two more guys for you, Q, both secondary members and key ones at that. Let's talk about Anthony Averett for a little bit. Averett is a player who, I'd say an up and down overall 2021 season for him, but has shown that he can still step up in the big moments at times. And I think had a much better first half than second half. Obviously got injured and missed a couple games there at the end. He's someone who could fetch a big contract from a team that maybe is very corner needy and maybe more on the rebuilding side and wants to take a chance on a young cornerback who has shown potential, do you think that Averett is worth bringing back for a Ravens team that has dealt with cornerback injuries of their own over the past couple of years?
Yeah, the mindset for Wink was trying to show that Chris had that, I think you go out and play Anthony Averett, you're the guy. You're Pro Bowl talent. The inconsistency of that is what gets me. Anthony Averett needs to be a Raven because of the depth issue. But it wouldn't surprise me if he left and they were okay with it.
Yeah, especially with the money. I think the money's the key thing here, because if he gets this huge offer from a team, I don't think Baltimore can even afford to match that, especially if they're bringing back Peters. It could be a choice between Averett and Peters in that situation. If both are going to have a $15 million cap hit, who am I taking? I'm taking Marcus Peters. So for me, it's going to depend on the contract. I would not be opposed to having Anthony Averett back in Baltimore. I think he's a good player, but the money, I think, is going to be the determining factor there. But Q, Deshaun Elliott is another interesting one, because a player who has suffered 3 season-ending injuries in 4 seasons, but has proven to be a really good safety when he's on the field, continues to grow, has a ton of potential. This could be like a 1-year prove-it deal type thing coming off of what he is coming off of. But at the same time, if another team sees that potential, the Ravens have Brandon Stevens waiting in the wings. Is Deshaun Elliott part of your future plans for this team?
Yeah, so the way in which he played, I think Deshaun, if the secondary safety-wise played better and had created these turnovers and really some big splash plays, I think we would be having different conversations. We would be talking about, what the Ravens did in the wild card weekend. None of that happened, and sure enough, we're here. We're talking now free agency. I think when it comes down to it, sure, go ahead and let Deshaun walk, and then test the market, and then you make him an offer that he can't refuse, and have him back on the team.
Yeah, he's important, I think. Again, the money I'm not gonna say an issue, but it is, I think, a key driving point, because if a team goes and offers him 4 for $56, I don't think you can match that if you're the Ravens. But if it's like hey, we're gonna pay you for 2 years, we know you're valuable, we know what you can bring, I think that's a player you should bring back. Yeah. Q, I think quickly here, let's talk about the Ravens who could potentially retire her free agents really quick. I'll go 4 names. You can go boom, 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 boom. Calais Campbell, Brandon Williams, Jimmy Smith, Pernell McPhee.
Jimmy Smith, retire. Pernell McPhee, kick the tires, see how you feel right around training camp. Calais Campbell, love to have him back. But if not, I can see him riding off into the sunset. Brandon Williams, he's just not the same player that we've been accustomed to seeing. And I would say, yeah, if he still wants to play, sure, I think Maravike and some of the other guys can step up and into that starting role and let him be a role player.
Yeah, those 4, I could see Jimmy Smith obviously made it clear that, it's Ravens or bust for him. He's not going anywhere if he's not coming back to the Ravens. So it seems like the writing could be on the wall for him and his career. I think Brandon Williams on like a 1-year, $3-4 million deal will be fine. If Calais Campbell does I think it could be like one of the two, where if Campbell wants to come back for another year, I definitely take him back for sure. And then maybe Williams is the odd man out because they're bringing in more depth, like a draft pick or something. But if not, and Campbell retires, then sure, I think Brandon Williams could come back. I think he played better in the second half of the season. McPhee, for me, yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. You kick the tire, see what's up with him, and then, he's not a 90% snap player anymore. So you know what you're getting out of him. He's a role player in certain situations. So I think that's where I am with that. But Q, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me here. The Ravens, really could look different during the 2022 season. We'll see in a few months here what they do decide to do with this team, but I don't know. Could be a little bit different of a team.
Yeah, it can. And I tell you what, Kevin, this is the fun now for us as far as the off season. So looking forward to all the the gossips and the rumors about what the Ravens are going to do to make this roster a better roster.
Oh yeah, we'll be talking about it all throughout the offseason here on Locked On Ravens. That's all I have for you here today, though, on Locked On Ravens. Let's take a 2-day break. We'll make it back here on Monday. We'll continue talking about this Baltimore Ravens team, so stay tuned for that. And I'll see you on Monday.